What is up YouTube? Welcome back to another video. Today's video is all about buying a car. Now this is something that a lot of people struggle to understand. What is the cheapest method? And it doesn't really just come down to the price. There are also psychological aspects to take into consideration. For example, how long you keep a car. Do you like to have a new car every other year? How much you use the car? And if you're just looking for sort of a standard runabout, or you prefer something fancy in the long run. However, we're talking about the numbers side of things here because a lot of people walk into a dealership and immediately take out finance on a car. And a lot of people these days think that the only way to get a car is to pay for it monthly, or otherwise you're going to get a box on wheels that's just going to cost them a lot to maintain. Now, back in the days, that used to be the case. You would have something that wouldn't really be as reliable, whereas these days cars are pretty much all made by robots. They're painted by robots, they're mechanically put together by robots, and they are made pretty solid. Hence why a lot of companies, even sort of the lower level of companies, can actually give 7-year, 5-year warranties on their cars. So even buying a second-hand car that's sort of 10 years old isn't just going to break down straight away. As long as you do your due diligence before you pick up the car and have a check over it, then there should be no problem. I personally have never bought a brand new car off the showroom for many reasons. First of all, the value it would lose as soon as I drive it off the lot. Secondly, I just wouldn't want to have that monthly payment coming out for something that I believe just needs to get me from A to B. Thirdly, I absolutely love my cars, but for me, I'm more sort of, as long as I have the luxuries in the car, cruise control and heated seats, etc., as opposed to a big engine and a fancy car with a big brand on it. However, let's talk about the 4 ways you can actually buy a car. Now, the first way is to buy it outright. The second way is to hire purchase a car. The third way is to PCP the car. And the fourth way is to lease the car. Now, the first way is to buy a car. Now, this will always be the cheapest way to buy a car. It's like shopping at the supermarket. You go into the supermarket, you see pasta for £1, you've got a pound, you buy the pasta, you take it home. Simple as that. You get onto the car market, you see a used car, and then again, you can't actually buy a brand new car with cash. There's nothing wrong with that. If you can afford it, you can do it. So you see a car, it's got a price on it, you pay that price and you take the car home. You don't need to worry about monthly payments, you don't need to worry about interest. You own that car outright. If it's a classic car, then it may go up in value, meaning you might get some equity back in the car. However, some people will just buy a car, keep it for as long as they want, and if they keep it in top tip condition, then they can probably sell it minus the mileage and any maintenance that they've done on the car. So that's pretty much straightforward. There's not really much to discuss here. The second option to buy a car is to hire purchase. Now, to keep that very simple, that's like any personal loan, or for example, a mortgage. You see a house and it's £100,000. Now, you can walk in and buy that house for £100,000 in cash, but that would be the first option of buying the car outright. Whereas in hire purchase, you see the car for £100,000 and then you take a loan against the car. So you put down a deposit of £10,000, meaning you need to then finance the other £90,000. And that £90,000 will have a percentage attached to it, which is what you pay for borrowing for that car. So you see a car that is £50,000 and you put down £10,000, you will then need to pay the other £40,000 with some interest on top. And at the end of it, you own the car outright like you do with a mortgage. You pay for the house, a deposit, then you pay a monthly installment which includes the capital as well as the interest, and once that's paid off, you own the deeds, you own the house, and it's yours, and you can do whatever you want with it. So that is hire purchase, very simple in a nutshell. Now, the third option is obviously the leasing option. Now, the best way to put this is it's just like renting. You don't own the car, so you don't own the house. You go in and you stay there and you're just paying per month to live in that flat or live in that house. So it's like the same as leasing a car. You're going in, you pay a deposit, you set a term with the dealership, say it's 2 years, then you get to drive that car for 2 years. Now, the way they calculate the payments is, they say the car's worth £40,000 and you want to keep it for 2 years, and in that 2 years you're planning to do 10,000 miles per year. So when you hand the car back in 2 years time, the car will be worth whatever it is today minus any depreciation it's taken over that 2 years. and that includes mileage, that includes any maintenance, that includes any damage. So whatever that depreciation figure is, that is essentially what gets split into 24 monthly payments, and you pay that per month. So if leasing, you pay a deposit, you agree on the mileage depending on how much you actually drive, and you agree the set amount. So you say, I'm taking this car away for 6 months, 2 months, 2 years, whatever it may be. Usually a lot of people will take out brand new cars for a short period of time, from 6 months to a year, and the payment per month is a lot higher, but at the end of it, they do not need to keep the car. They can hand the car back, take out a newer model, or go to a different dealership and get a different car altogether. So when you see a lot of people that buy high-end cars, usually they are leased, because they want the car for a year, and then in a year's time they change their mind. They don't do much mileage either, and they usually keep these cars in pristine condition. If you don't keep it in pristine condition, or you do over the agreed mileage, at the end of the contract, when you hand the car back, the dealership will charge you X amount per mile that you've done extra, because the car's depreciated more because you've put more miles on it, and if there's any damage and bumps and scuffs, then they will price that up to get that repaired, which usually the dealership charges a lot more to do. Now the final one, and usually the most popular one, is PCP, which is personal contract purchase. Now, the way this works is, again, you pay a deposit for the car, you set the term of how long you're wanting to keep the car, and what the dealership will do is they'll give you a guaranteed future value of the car. So you've seen a car for £40,000, and in 2 years' time they tell you, based on you doing 10,000 miles per year, the future guaranteed value of that car will be £20,000, meaning that you then need to pay £20,000 for the car. However, at the end of the PCP, rather than walking away, you get to actually keep the car by paying a final value payment. Now, why is this one more popular? This is because dealerships actually push this a lot more than any of the other options, because once you've bought a car from them, you hand that car back. If you've done excessive mileage or there's damage to the car and it's not worth as much, then you can roll that negative equity into another car. So if you've done 25,000 miles as opposed to 20, and there's a few bumps and scuffs, and you've not really looked after the car, that car may be worth £15,000 as opposed to 20, which was guaranteed. However, that £5,000, a lot of people can't just cough up and be like, here you go, let's settle it. They can just roll that into another car. That's why dealerships can just keep you in the loop and keep you buying another car. So that's why you might see this one being pushed quite a lot. Now that pretty much covers off the 4 main options, and of course the other finance options really depends on if you like to keep your car for a long time, or do you like it for 6 months, if you like to drive a fancy new car, or you just prefer a brand new car so you don't have to pay maintenance on it, or you just need a car for the short term, or whatever your situation may be. The cheapest way will always be to cash buy a car that you can afford. That way you know you can afford a car, and you've got £1,000, £2,000, you can go and buy a car. As long as it's checked over, cars are pretty much solid and reliable these days. It's always best to just double check the MOT history of the car, which is the Ministry of Transport test that they do on a car to make sure it's fit for the road. If a car's recently been MOT'd and all you need to do is tax and insure it, then you can pretty much pick up a decent runabout for £1,000 to £2,000, especially if you're trying to work out of debt and you've got other big debts going on. It's best just to pick a small runabout. That will always work out the cheapest. On top of that, say you did pay £2,000 for this car and you looked after it for a year, and you've paid the insurance and you've paid the tax. If you looked after it well and you get a re-MOT'd and you decide to sell it, you could probably sell it for roughly about the same price as you bought it from, meaning you've sort of just rented the car really cheaply. Now you're maybe wondering, how is that possible? That's because a brand new car will lose most of its value and depreciation as soon as you drive it off the lot. So in the first year it loses most of it, in the second year it loses not as much but still quite a lot, in the third year not as much. But whereas if you buy a car that's 10 years old, it's not really got any much more to lose. It will only lose a few £100 based on the thousands of miles that you actually put onto it. But if you keep it for a year, you look after it, you keep it clean, you don't do as many miles, then it's probably worth exactly what you paid for it at the time. If you maybe do some modifications and replace a bulb and put new mats, etc. in it, then you can actually probably sell it for a little bit more. However, overall, that is the cheapest and the best way and the most worry-free way of buying a car. You don't need to worry about interest, you don't need to worry about any monthly payments going out. You've bought the car, that's on your drive, you own that completely outright, and in a way it is an asset because you don't owe anyone money, meaning that if you were needing sort of a few £1,000s, you could go and sell that car and raise some money. And finally, just to say, I've got family that work in the car sales business. I've got nothing bad to say about the industry. These guys are selling cars for people that want to buy a car. However, the issue is a lot of young folk I see are walking into dealerships, and family members have told me that they walk in, they can't afford it, they don't look at the cost of the car, they don't look at the price of the car, that this is a £40,000 car, a £50,000 car. They look at the badge of the car, the engine sometimes, usually the men look at the engine, the women don't, and they look at how much it is going to cost me per month. And usually, if it's a very, very expensive car, they will try and extend that financing agreement to 5 years, meaning that they're only really paying £250, £300 a month. But that is a lot of money to pay for a car that they can't essentially afford. So that's just a quick video, a few top tips on if you are looking to buy a car. The cheapest method is just to buy it outright, and if you can't buy it outright, then gather a deposit, walk in, put a deposit down as big as you can, and just do a hire purchase agreement. That way the payments per month are a bit smaller. However, at the end of it, you own the car because you've paid off the principal of the car as well as a little bit of interest. But that's just how the world works. If you wanted to buy a house, it would be the same situation. Leasing and PCP can also work, but that again depends on your circumstances and your situation, whether you like a fancy car, whether you like a new car every 6 months or every year. That's completely up to you. And with that, I'd like to end the video. Thanks again for watching. Catch you in the next one.